I'm chill.
All right, let's run it. So I'm here today with Spencer Suflow, and dude, I'm really excited for this because I've been following you for a long time. God knows how many years you've been shooting. Probably like how many at this point? Like
A
eight,
while. Yeah,
10,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends when you count it,
I
right?
was trying
But
to go back on your Instagram and find like your first post, and it just kept going. So
yeah, I mean, I started doing it for work like 5 years ago.
yeah,
But I
okay,
was kind of messing around in college and
yeah.
stuff. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, dude, you're an absolute veteran. You've worked with brands like Can-Am, Unreal, Toyota, T-Mobile, Shaq. Like you've worked with a ton of really respectable companies, clients, what have you. Some really awesome collaborations. You're a certified red owner and operator. Um, One of the best directors and style. Like I like the kind of style that you do as well in terms of just your editing and everything.
Appreciate
So
it. Yeah.
so yeah, really pumped to have you.
Stoked to be here.
My first question is just going back to how did you get your start? Because I know that can be pretty interesting for people. How they
For
stumble
sure.
into it.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. I feel like you pumped me up more than I've earned already. And I probably take the DP title more than director title, but I know I kind of fallen in different spots. But yeah, I mean, I think for most people, it depends like how far back you want to go, right? So I'm not the kid who was like running around with the VHS at 8 years old. Like that
We
wasn't
can talk
me.
about like how you started professionally.
Yeah.
I guess like
Um,
so like take me back to the 5 years, that
yeah.
inflection point when you're like I'm gonna actually do this for a living and start making money.
Right. And the reason I say I wasn't the kid running around with the VHS, because I think a lot of people, it's easy to say that. Like, I always love capturing stuff, and I knew I wanted to make this my job. Like, I had no idea. Like, I was messed around with GoPros in high school, and it was fun. Took some photos for like the dance team or something. Was in a photography class, but zero grid for like I'm gonna do this as a job. I was going to school for PT, and as I got closer to finishing my undergrad and starting grad school, I just found myself doing more and more video stuff. Um, the two things pulling at my time were shooting, editing things, and then just like helping with nonprofits and like ministry stuff on campus. So I kind of realized that that's where I was being drawn to. So when I graduated college, I just dove in and went full time. And I kind of, the closer I got, the more I knew that that was probably going to be my decision, because I was slowly getting exposed to a little bit. Still mostly like run and gun, just like me with the camera, like me with my mom's D7000 DSLR, and eventually bought a Sony at some point in college, and was just shooting random stuff. But then, yeah, when I graduated, um, it was January 2019. I went full time, and that was the same month. Well, technically December. I got married and graduated in December, and then January started, and I was like, all right, I'm full time now. So I kind of had just dove in head first with
Right.
responsibilities and life to pay for and a wife all at once. So it was definitely like
Oh
a
man,
good
that's really fun.
transition.
Yeah, that's a lot, dude, to really in terms of like having responsibilities already to dive into all at once. I'm curious, one thing that I think a lot of people wonder about, and I'm still figuring out ways to do this, but how did you, with diving into it like that, how did you just hit the ground running in terms of clients and actually landing projects and things like that? Because I feel like a lot of people get kind of stuck in they try it and they make the leap, but they get kind of stuck in like the permanent like freelancer thing. So how did you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what the best ways to do that are. And there's so many different lanes within the industry. And I think the sooner you can learn that, the better. And at the time, I had no idea the difference really of like coming on as a cam op on someone else's production versus working with a client myself. Like that was pretty fuzzy for me in college. Like I guess I had a little bit of a grid because I would like make a video for my church and they would pay me a little bit, and then I would also go like shoot for this small agency in Mankato. So I was starting to get a little bit of exposure of like different ways you navigate the industry.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, as far as like getting clients, one of the groups I started working with was like my at the time, fiance, girlfriend, I don't remember what season it was, her dad's best friend like did live stream for a org, and then he looped me in, and eventually I started working with them directly once he kind of stopped doing stuff. And just meeting people, I feel like my last 5-ish years has been way better. I've been way better at networking within the industry than I have been with clients. I think that's kind of been true from day one. Like, it's been easier for me to go meet like someone who would hire me to cam op or edit than it was to like go find a new client. And the more I grew, the more I learned those are two entirely different things. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but yeah, it's trying to be good at what you do and be a friend and meet people. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's relationships more than anything.
The network thing. Instead of spending your time like prospecting for leads, you're prospecting for partners in the industry. That
totally. And something. When I started, I think I didn't really know where I was going, but there was just a big part of me that wanted to like make stuff with friends, and social media was growing enough, and I was definitely behind the ball on this. Like, I've never been huge on socials, but I could open Instagram and I was starting to see like, oh, this person went and filmed this and they went with 2 friends. Like, that's sick. Like, I'm just doing this by myself in a room. And that's honestly,
classic
I think,
editor lifestyle.
Right. And even like the church stuff and everything I was doing, it was a lot of just me by myself. And I was getting little glimpses of like working with people with that agency. But yeah, I think it was just my desire to want to work with friends that kind of opened me up to just like reaching out to people and slowly finding people that I could hopefully have some sort of skill set to offer.
Yeah, 100%. And then I'm guessing that led to like all the brands I mentioned in the beginning. Again, going back to like when people are starting out, they have, dreams of working with a certain brand, and so they'll make spec commercials and stuff like that. Was that your ticket to working with a lot of those brands, is just the network thing, or do you think that there's other things that play into it too?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all a different story, right? So that list you gave me, like, I can point back, like, one of them I DP'd because I met a dude on Instagram, and eventually he had me come shoot something, small crew. One of them was, actually 2 of them were that same dude, I think. And then one of them was someone I met just at an event through that agency. And then years later, he was doing his own thing and I was doing my own thing, and it worked. And yeah, it's just, I feel like they're each a different story. And
the truth.
Did that answer your question? I think I tailed off a little bit.
No, that makes sense. I mean, the truth is, like, you'll never know. It's just all about the inputs,
right? Which
for you was the network thing and just posting your work. So that makes sense. Speaking of posting your work, I saw that you recently like put together a formal brand, right? Flow Studios.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what I started with. Okay. That was more of a day one thing. Because I've been more of a contractor and more of a shooter, slowly turned into DP, a lot of drone stuff. From day one, I had a mix of that. I was trying to get some clients and I was trying to shoot like with people on their productions. And the more I understood those differences, the easier it was to like talk to a client. And I was Flow Studios at the time. It was Flow Creative, I think, is where I started. Or Flow Media, and then Flow Studios. And then when I was talking to a production company, I was Spencer. Okay. But because I've leaned heavier into being a contractor, I feel like a lot of dudes I know in the industry don't even know that Flow Studios is a thing.
Yeah. So it's basically just form follows function. It's just like if you're going to go direct to a brand or something, that's when you use the studios. And if you're going to be one-off shooter, pick up a project, it's just your personal brand.
For sure. And I think when I started, like I said, I was learning what that separation looked like. I didn't really know. But as time progressed, like I see the differences in those 2 types of careers. And I'm still navigating like where do they each fit.
Yeah.
Because some people would argue if you're trying to DP, like it doesn't make sense to own a production company. Others would say it doesn't matter, but they're entirely different careers. So like if you're a production company, you're working with a client, you're doing everything. You're direct, like not necessarily you, but under your umbrella, whether it's you or you hire a crew, the directing, potentially creative direction, depending on if that's happening under the client or the agency, the editing, like the producing, the project managing, like everything's under you. Whereas if I'm DPing, if I'm coming on someone else's production, whether it's commercial shoot or whatever, I'm in charge of the image. I'm handling camera department and I'm handling lighting department, and I'm talking with the producer and director to make sure that everything meshes, that we can get everything captured. I'm in charge of making it look right, get everything captured correctly. And yeah, I'm slowly like creating a little more healthy separation of that now, where Flow Studios is a little more like facing nonprofits, and me as a DP is more commercial, sports, action sports, whatnot. And it's never going to be a perfect line, but that allows me to like have healthy relationships on both sides. And I have like a lot of people that I bring on when it's Flow Studios. Like I try not to do Flow Studio stuff just myself.
Right. And did you, with doing all the DP stuff, did that happen naturally? Did you just try everything, or how did you actually kind of like end up doing what you're specializing in?
Yeah, I mean it was a slow journey to like, I mean I started with a camera in my hand, so I think it was natural that as I learned more about what like a proper production looks like, I realized the DP was the one in charge of making it look pretty. And I enjoyed that. Like I enjoyed making things look cool. Mm-hmm. So I think I naturally like gravitated towards that as I learned more about different roles on a set. And that was a huge piece in me kind of stepping more in that direction.
Yeah, 100%.
There was a second half of that question I feel like I missed. What was the second half of that?
Not really. I was just curious because I feel like, I mean, going back to the beginning, some people immediately are like, I want to do this specific thing. But I feel like a majority of people don't know what they're doing. And it's kind of the joke of being like a PA and just doing everything.
Right.
It sucks. So, I was just curious on that. I want to take a little pivot because today actually, so obviously ChatGPT and OpenAI, right? So they just came out with a text to video tool, and it's actually like really good, like super. Have you seen it?
I saw a little teaser of it. Yeah.
Okay, what did you think of that?
I mean, I think it's crazy. Like technology just continues to progress, and it's wild.
Yeah. It's called Sora, by the way. Just
yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm deep enough in the industry to have like a super like rock hard opinion. But I think with any technology that comes out, there's going to be people that latch onto it right away, dive in, try and capitalize on it, both creatively and financially. Like I think that's the case with a lot of things. Like, I mean, digital cameras for one is an example. Like the switch from film to digital, and this is a little like older than me, but that drastically changed how easily accessible video was to people and how much quicker you could get something done. Like smartphones getting better changes things. And there's little ways that all of those impact the industry is what it seems like from my perspective. And I think AI stuff is going to be similar. Like there's going to be portions of the industry that are probably shifted in really big ways. I could see e-com maybe being a place where AI really kind of takes a hold, like whether it's the animated videos or whatnot. Maybe not with product stuff. Like if you have a product, maybe if you
specific products.
Right. If you're putting your renders in and then pairing it with AI, like maybe that could be a place. But I think there's always going to be a way that like there's going to be portions of the industry that it doesn't reach. And I think that's true. Like you look at smartphone stuff and there might be an Apple keynote or random commercials and whatnot shot on phones, and
they're just like the shot on iPhone thing you're talking about?
Yeah. And it can change portions of the industry and maybe slim productions that would have been huge got slimmed down and budgets get affected and whatnot. But there's still Hollywood movies. There's still massive commercials that are $20 million budget. Like there's all those things didn't disappear, but maybe they've been swayed or etched out a little. Like this little portion of the industry changed.
Well, I think too, there's so much. It's also, like it's industrial with with what they're building in Arizona. Like, have you seen that huge facility?
Yeah, just a bunch of stages.
Yeah, in Atlanta too. They're doing all that stuff. So it's like, probably won't fully go away. I could see it really speeding up the process of like storyboarding and adding like a live element to it.
Totally.
So if a client wants to see, like, you've been shooting a lot of car stuff kind of, so if a client wants to see like a certain angle, right, or something, but see it moving, I could see it being a use case for that probably.
Totally.
But I mean, think you're right for sure.
Yeah, that could be huge if you're used to hiring a storyboard artist and you're going back and forth on a lot of calls just to get your storyboard ironed out, and you can kickstart that a lot quicker. Like that's definitely an example that it could be huge. And a lot of people will make a full animatic for a video before they go shoot it. If you're not familiar, an animatic is like it's like a rough cut of the commercial before you've shot it. So whether that's pulling stock footage, pulling storyboard frames, like getting, or even doing previs, like taking CGI and VFX to like start the process to show the client what it's going to look like. And sometimes that's even like done before a budget is locked in. So you're doing that to help kind of sell the vision. So I think you're right. That could be a huge piece at the beginning there.
Yeah, I feel that definitely debunks the like, because I've just been seeing so much stuff today. It's like, oh, like Hollywood is done for. And it's like, no, I mean, you'll just save money on some parts of the process and stuff like that. So yeah, it's
you can't, and this will be interesting to see like how AI grows when like 30 years from now when we're old and have been in it a while. But
your kids are watching this.
Yeah.
Like, you look so young, bro.
Right. But like acting is an example of like, AI would have to go so far to like fill the box of what like our top level actors are doing, right? So even if it might start etching out pieces of e-com or commercials or something, like to replace a Leonardo DiCaprio in a film is near impossible.
Because there's so many little like idiosyncrasies and stuff, or even like method acting that's the thing with AI and writing too. I think a lot of people don't realize it's like it's never going to replace a novel or something because there's no emotionality to it really. It's just like an objective tool. So I agree. The actors bring that level of
and even if it gets better at emotion, like I feel like it's hard to replace that. It's hard to replace a good director. It's unique, it's intentional, and I'm young. I feel like I can barely speak to some of those things. Like I'm not a director, I'm not a commercial director, but it's interesting.
So earlier before we recorded, we were talking about how camera equipment's getting really cheap, basically. I've always been a fan of Red. I think just like the image quality, and I like how you can build out their cameras and stuff like that. And we were talking earlier how I think you said your friend just sold his Gemini or something for like $3,000.
Yeah, I know someone who bought one for like 3-ish.
So I'm curious, one, on like the Red ecosystem and how that's evolved, and then also in terms of cost and like where you see the future of not just Red, I guess, but equipment. But the Red thing's interesting because like not everyone has one, right? And you've been operating on them for a while, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all technology, and we were kind of maybe alluding to this, like it gets better and cheaper as time goes on. There's like a lot of other things don't get cheaper as they get better, but for some reason, technology, it's like we're progressing so fast, and it's same with phones. Like a brand new iPhone might be $1,500 now, and literally in 2 years, that same iPhone's like $700 or whatnot. And TVs are probably the biggest example.
Oh, yeah.
Like TVs have gotten so cheap and so good. I don't understand the economics behind all of it.
I don't either. I bought one recently and I was shocked.
Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, like they're tools and they're fun tools. Like it's fun to use them and mess around. But if they're going to keep getting better and cheaper, like it only opens a door wider for people to do stuff in this industry. And I think that's like the cool thing about it. Like I've been able to do stuff with X amount of dollars now that if I was born 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to do. Like it would have taken a lot more. Like you can do a lot more with 5-10 grand a gear than you could 10 years ago. And that's fun because then it kind of, I would say it starts to slowly strip down your barriers, right? So if you're trying to go make something, the less money is a barrier, the more you can do. And that's huge. And sometimes you just need to get a camera in your hand to start. And I think that's true with a lot of people, no matter what area of the industry you get in. So if you can get a decent camera in your hand, and depends how deep you want to go with lenses. If you can get a decent camera and lens in your hand, you can get the ball started. You know, you can get going and you can be creative. And if you have good stuff you're putting in front of the lens, whether you take the $500 point and shoot or the 50 grand plus mini LF, they're both going to show the same cool scene. Now, me being a DP, there's a lot that goes into what sensor and lens and everything that you're going to pick, but you can do cool stuff with any camera. So I think it just opens the door wider.
Right. Yeah. All really good points. This is not a play on words on purpose, but with the work I've been doing recently, a lot of it has been on the computer. And so for me, I can easily get in a flow state if I'm doing something hands-on that's not on the computer. When it comes to like sitting down though and working, one thing I've been practicing a lot is getting in a flow state. And so I was curious to ask you, with some of the editing and stuff you've been doing, again, before the episode you were talking about how you've been editing a lot. How do you find your flow and get into that state where you're focused and you're creating your best work?
It's not easy. I mean, I feel like a lot of my career so far has been when it comes to editing, I think it's been trying to get stuff done in not enough time and probably too many things on my plate, which I think has led me to not want to edit as much, and which has only been one extra factor that's pushed me to be a DP more than anything. Right. But I think in those cases where I have moments of sitting down and just trying to make something beautiful on the computer, I've always done the best when like all my other to-dos for the day are done. Yeah. It's hard for me to like sit down at 9 a.m. when I have a meeting with either a director or a client at noon and edit. Like, I don't know if there's a discipline that I'm lacking there, but that's hard.
No, it's basically clearing your mind. Yeah. Like, I'm the same way. Like, I could never not do it at 9 a.m. I'm just like ripping everything possible.
Right.
No, so
yeah, it's tricky.
It's like a muscle, like practicing it and clearing your head, and
totally
that's what works best for you.
And it's
about like your environment or anything,
right?
Effect on it.
I mean, having a good desk is huge. Like I love having a wide monitor. I'm like picky with my keyboard, mouse, trackpad setup. Like I love to set up those things in a well where it's productive. But yeah, sitting down and just trying to clear everything else out is huge. But like I definitely have like my ways that I set up windows and all that.
I was curious about that because then there's like other people who will be like the same day like event editors, and that's crazy. They're just on like the fold out like beer pong table. Like
I've done some of those. Yeah. I used to do a lot of those overnights, and
that's not flow state. That's just like drugs and caffeine.
That's like caffeine and some sugar, and you would just go for it. Yeah. And I mean, I've made some fun stuff on like an overnight thing. It's like a love-hate for me. I don't. It's definitely not the thing I'm gonna do.
Right.
Like I don't really do those anymore. It's been a long time since I've had like a overnight edit that I had anything to do with the editing. I know I have some friends that like they crush it and they thrive in that, and they feel like the challenge is worth it, and they work in fun VFX and all those things. But yeah, for me, like I did some and it was cool and it was fun, and it maybe took a few years off my life.
Nah, you'll
but
be good.
yeah, that's a whole nother, there, you can make great stuff in a short amount of time with an unideal setup, but sometimes it's a little more like freeing and enjoyable to just like not have a time clock, have your desk set up the way you want, sit down full of energy.
Enjoyable.
Yeah.
They're different. I mean, yeah, you're right. You can't get some really crazy stuff done in just some really like weird environments. But it's a balance because there's the opposite too. Mm-hmm. So you've been shooting a lot of stuff. So talking commercially, I mean, you've worked with Unreal, so fashion, you've done automotive stuff, you've done probably some, I mean, event stuff, right? You've done a lot of that. What's like the biggest, or is there even a commonality in shooting all of that? And how do you manage switching, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like I was saying earlier, what role you're in dictates a lot of how you navigate. Like for me, most of those jobs you're referencing, I was a DP. So, and if you're the DP, I think the biggest variable in the whole equation is like relationship with the director and or producer. Because that dictates how much freedom you have. They're the one, probably you're going back and forth with them on budget. It's usually director has a vision for how he wants to accomplish it, and you want to do that the best you can in the time you have with the budget you have, figuring out what support you need for camera and lighting. And it's definitely like a dance of navigating all those. So yeah, the relationship is huge, and being really good at communication, I think, is arguably more important than being able to pick the perfect lens and whatnot. But yeah, as a DP, like you really are a big hinge in a production, because like the director's counting on you to create the image, producers like counting on you to help stay within budget and actually get things done in time. And the director might, depending on the project, you might have a director who's done 100 car shoots and you're one of those, and he understands the timing and the layout and whatever. And maybe you have an AD that's also been on a bunch of car shoots. Or if it's a smaller thing and I'm like younger as a DP than a lot of like seasoned dudes, it might be a smaller crew where not everyone has a bunch of experience with the car or the motorcycle or whatever it is. And you're having to navigate and do the best you can to like figure out what is a healthy amount of shots to pick off during sunset, and how can we capitalize the most on that with the movement we need and the light we want to hit, and how much am I choosing to light and actually walk in stands and diffusion and bounce and all those things if we're outside, or if we're doing that in a room but we're still using some of the daylight as part of our equation. Like all of those things kind of mesh together in this like crazy math equation balancing act. But to more directly answer your question, all of that I think plays into like the next job you have. So if one shoot is a commercial and you're in a living room, and the next shoot is a commercial and you're in a living room, but there's a couple different variables, that knowledge is way easier transferable. For sure. It's going to be easier for that director to be like, oh, I love what you did here, we want to do something very similar. If you're shooting commercials of clothes in a living room and then you want to go shoot a car on a racetrack, like you said, very different thing, a lot of different variables that you have to learn. And it's a process. Like they all come with different things. Like shooting in the desert, that you got to deal with sand. Shooting on a track, you got to deal with speed and keeping people safe and all of that. Shooting in a room with talent and models, there's more of the how do people's bodies look good and angles and pose. Like each of them brings their own set of variables, which is why you see directors and DPs, especially, will start to excel at one thing, because you can't be good at everything. It's really hard to be good at everything.
Yeah. I want to go back to the racetrack thing. One of the things, I love cars personally, and the stuff you did with the Ferrari was crazy. Do you have any like stories or want to talk about that?
I mean, the dudes that I did that
for context too.
Yeah.
I think if I got this right, it was you and probably a crew of like 5 people, like pretty lean production, and you guys went on a racetrack and literally raced a Ferrari around the racetrack. I don't know exactly how fast you're going because video can kind of like mess with it, but I think you guys were going pretty fast and you covered it from like every angle, and it was great. So
yeah, so that was definitely younger crew on that. So a lot of the dudes had shot cars before, but not with like an arm car. So we had the crane on top of the car, which I've done a little bit with. So I was kind of the main dude who was like kind of helping everything mesh. But the dudes who are driving the car and operating the arm, they do it all the time. So we were able to get at least our driver and our crane op were seasoned dudes. I was somewhere in the middle, and then a bunch of the rest of the crew was a little younger, more like photo, younger video dudes. And our dude directing, he does a lot of photo, slowly doing more video. So kind of meshing all that was a process, but we only ended up with like an hour on the track, which is not much time.
oh yeah,
And
wow.
so one thing, and you might not see this looking back at the video, there wasn't a lot of coordinated moves on the track. And that's one thing with like car to car stuff, is the emotion that you portray in a clip and in an edit comes a lot with like how the car's moving and what angle you're showing it from and how you're showcasing the speed or not showcasing the speed. So me, when I look at that video, it sticks out real like a sore thumb how much of it is actually just like rollers, whereas I would have loved to like coordinate a lot more moves. But given the time, and the piece you saw was only 30 minutes of that 60 minutes we had on the track, because the other 30 minutes, or maybe 20, so maybe it was maybe 40 minutes, and the other 20 was clips where the dude who hired us for that shoot, he has 3 Ferraris and he wanted some clips of all 3 of them rolling together. So the last 20-ish minutes was that, which wasn't even in the edit you saw.
Yeah.
So we only had 40-ish minutes. So that was one thing that we didn't have much time on the track, and we were trying to make the most of it and would have loved to do more coordinated moves. But like I said, like younger crew overall, like we were doing, I think, the best we could with the time we had and tried to make it look pretty. And speed wise, those tracks are not cheap. So I don't know like exactly where total budget and all that fell. Like it was definitely a lower budget thing for running on the track with Ferraris and a arm car. But what I heard briefly was that they couldn't afford having a full safety crew out for the track. So our speed, I think, was capped at like 60, which you can get some great stuff at 60, but when you're shooting a Ferrari, it'd be great to go faster than 60.
Yeah.
More safety concern, more coordination from car to camera to car you're actually capturing, subject car. So, yeah, I don't know if that kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse in.
Yeah, well, it's just that's always fascinating because like I would have never look at the video, I would have never known those were the constraints. Would have thought you had 4 hours on the track and like you guys are going faster and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to hear that.
Did a good job with the edit then, I guess.
Yeah. What was the camera car? Was it just one of the Cayennes? Or?
Yeah, it was a Porsche Cayenne.
Okay. And you guys had 3 people in there, driver, crane.
Yeah, so we had driver,
focus?
director, crane op. I was DP opping camera movement, and then we had a dude point focus. So
Okay.
5.
Okay. Did you fly any FPV on that shoot?
I didn't fly for that. No. So in that 40 minutes, we simultaneously had a dude flying as well.
Yeah.
So we would actually stop let him make a lap or two with FPV, and then continue on. So yeah, it was a little bit of a hectic hour for sure. Not how I would write it up, but sometimes like I said, you make the most of the experience and then try and get on the next one that's a little cleaner and try and elevate it each time that you can. And I think and this is just true with all production, each time you go make the most of something, hopefully you can land or get on as a contractor something that's a step up. And as you grow, when you do get those that maybe feel like a step backwards where you're more constrained with circumstances, hopefully you have more tools in your tool belt to make the most of that, right? Yeah. So if I had walked into the exact same scenario again, there's things I would do differently to kind of maximize that time and angles and shots per what the director wants, of course. But yeah, so it's always, you're just like slowly adding to your tool belt.
Are you still, you do some FPV, don't you?
Yeah, I've kind of been stepping away from it a bit, not because I don't like it. Like, it's super fun. Like, I love flying. Like, since college, I bought like my first drone and I was like hooked, and it's like so fun. Before the whole DJI FPV kind of revolution came through, like I had built a few of them, was just like flying by myself, like, dang, it'd be cool to do this for jobs. But I was also shooting, and I was also doing random client stuff because I still had to make money and had a wife and responsibilities. And she was making some money too, but it was a joint effort. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I kept progressing in the FPV stuff. I was doing GoPro FPV. I was doing the fly-throughs. I was putting the Komodo on, like doing a little bit of Cinelifter stuff. And I'm still like working through this decision and how exactly I want to present myself when I'm talking with directors and production companies. But I kind of got to a point where I'm like, I want to be a really good DP. If I'm not being a really good DP, I want to be doing work for like nonprofits. Like I said, that's definitely something me and my wife, we both enjoy. And then the third box would be drone, I guess, at this point. And doing all those really well at a high level is just a lot. And especially like FPV is so many more variables than doing like DJI drone stuff. So kind of the approach I've been in lately is, if I'm doing drone stuff, I'll fly Mavics, I'll fly Inspires. But if it needs to be FPV, I'm probably not the pilot. Like, I'll bring in a friend. I have lots of friends who are well beyond me, who fly 3 hours a day on average just to stay sharp. And that was never me. Even, I mean, I had a season where I was flying a bunch, but even in my peak, I wasn't flying hours a day. So yeah, I'm kind of taking the seat of, if it's a bigger drone thing and I can op camera and we have a pilot opping and then like our visual observer, I'll do that. Or if it's a job where I can be more of the aerial DP where I'm not flying but I'm directing drone, that meshes a little better with me as a DP than trying to be the dude who is a DP on a job and then like quick throws up the Komodo FPV rig by myself. Like I've done some of those and it's just a little hectic. It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot of liability for one, and it's just a lot to like be processing and navigating. So I'm either trying to take jobs as a DP, take jobs as like Inspire op, or do like dual op stuff.
That's always interesting too, because I actually got my Part 107, and it's just funny to me, like the amount of people that do it commercially and they just don't care about any of like the rules or anything. And it's like, you can't really put up like I mean, how much does a Komodo weigh? Like 2 pounds on a Cinelifter. It's like, it's not
like 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's not a light thing. It's like, you can't just like put that up and not have someone watching it and just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna send this. It gets a little different. Did you ever get your license for that or not?
Yeah, and pretty much all the drone stuff I've done has been licensed, proper FAA authorizations, insured properly. That's one thing I've been really proud of. Like, I know dudes on both ends. I know dudes who give 0 Fs. They go out there, no proper insurance, no license, no nothing. And I mean, if you don't have your license, your insurance probably is going to back out anyway. If something happened. and I know groups that do it at a really high level way beyond me, and they have all the boxes checked. And me being someone who started out day one with a wife and like goals to be professional and mature, I've tried to do everything I can by the book. Ironically, the one or two times I've done something not by the book, I've got like destroyed on social media, which is hilarious because I know dudes who've never done it by the book and people hype them up to high heaven. So that's a pretty funny like variable in it all. And I met a few friends because they roasted me on Instagram for the one thing I posted that wasn't legal, and then I took it down.
Oh, dude, I have like some stuff I can't even talk about on here because I just was like didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And I actually called Ben, and he was like, don't you fucking dare post that. So yeah, I just always think that's interesting. Yeah. But wrapping up here, what's your plan for the future, and like where do you see yourself 5 years from now and what you want to be doing?
I have no idea where I'll be in 5 years. Hopefully, I think the few things that I love and enjoy are shooting stuff that's beautiful, fun, high energy, which I think kind of falls under that DP commercial umbrella for the most part. And then the second thing is like projects that help people and serve people and actually leave some sort of impact. So like as fun as shooting a hoodie or a car is, like it's not really changing anyone's life. Like I can treat people well on those jobs. I can be great to work with. But selling a car isn't really helping anyone directly. Whereas like some of the nonprofit stuff, like I've had projects where we go film a story and that story gets shown to other people and it genuinely can impact their life. Yeah. Or if a nonprofit's trying to raise money and that money that's raised like helps people in X, Y, or Z country in the Middle East or something. So I feel like those are the two things that I enjoy, and I would say my wife as well. She's along for the ride. She used to be a nurse, but now she's not a nurse anymore. She's just like, we're kind of tackling things together. So if it's cool. If it's a DP thing, it's me, Spencer. But if it's a Flow Studios thing, Bella's like kind of managing it. And
that's so nice, dude. Yeah. Not having to do all the ops stuff by yourself.
Yeah, slowly been working her in and trying to draw a little more of a line. Like I was saying earlier, if it's Flow Studios and it's with a nonprofit, ideally, like she's kind of handling like the logistics and setting it up, and still hire a team. Like I love like hiring people, and for most roles there's people way better than myself. So even if Bella's kind of leading the way, like once a job is landed, we can decide, or she can decide what crew makes sense for it. And maybe I'm a part of that and maybe I'm not. So I think that'll be a part of what we're doing in 5 years. I'd be pretty confident saying that. And then me shooting stuff. And I think there's some random branches off of those things that could be really fun. Like we've toyed with the idea of starting our own nonprofit, which could be, I'm sure that'd be a whole nother endeavor that there's so many variables we don't know, but we could see that being fun. Like we love, we have friends like overseas doing amazing work and like no one knows about them, and like capturing those stories and helping them raise money could be a really fun aspect of our lives in the future. And then as far as like DP stuff goes, like the more beautiful stuff I can make, the more fun it is, in my opinion. So whether that's doing car to car stuff and buying a car with a crane on top would be sick, or like, I don't think I'd ever do the rental house thing, but I think it'd be fun being like the camera movement specialty, whatever, whether it's owning the camera car or putting the camera arm on top of a Can-Am or something. Like I could see myself doing that down the road. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, lightning round, three quick questions. Number one is, who's your favorite creator right now? I don't know if I love the word creator, but who's your And then, use the word you would use. Good favorite, good live feedback, just in general. So I want to say Matt and Ross Duffer, because I'm like obsessed with Stranger Things, but I don't like. I'm like so far away from even wanting to do TV
Yeah.
yet. I mean, if I got called for something like that, I'd obviously do it, but I'm not the person to get called for that. I haven't done anything like that. But in like the commercial world, I mean, Stepped has a bunch of fun directors,
dude, yeah.
and hopefully
Their
if we
stuff is
get
so
out
good.
west, I can maybe get looped in there more. So they have some really fun directors that can take like the most random brand and make it look so cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's random DPs I take inspo from, but Stepped, I love what some of their directors do, and yeah, I could pinpoint a few, but yeah, there's a handful. Matt and Ross Duffer are sick though.
Okay.
Stranger Things is so fun.
Speaking of brands, the second one is if you could only shoot for one brand the rest of your career, what brand would it be?
Okay, I'm gonna answer this with no care for actually helping people, and I would say Oakley. If I had to pick just one, like I think some of my favorite commercials are Oakley commercials, and I mean goggles and sunglasses are just, it's kind of a cheat code. Like it's easier to make them look sick than a lot of other things.
Yep.
And Oakley is a brand that they've always like had edgier stuff. Like they just posted a thing which Stepped did. It was like super fun CGI factory concept. And then it cuts to him in the desert on a dirt bike. I'm like, that's sick. Like, that's super cool.
You'd work with Stepped for Oakley.
Right. That'd be the ideal.
I don't disagree. Last one is best movie of all time.
Best movie. Ooh.
Best
I think
cinema.
I think my 4 on the letterbox right now, my top 4 are Ford vs. Ferrari. I think I have Oppenheimer on there right now. I think I have Creed 2 on there. And then so I'm trying to remember what the last one. I better look at it. This is important. If you're not on Letterboxd.
Creed 2 is kind of out of left field.
Me and my dad grew up watching all the Rocky movies, so I have a soft spot for all the Creed stuff. And The Covenant, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
That Jake Gyllenhaal one, right?
Yes, yeah, he's such a good actor. I'd probably go with Ford vs. Ferrari. I think just like the combination of the visuals and the story is just so well done. So I love that one. But yeah, it's tough. I feel like I always end up making a list instead of picking a top one.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm just Spencer Suflow. Same with like my website, spencersuflow.com. If it's more of the nonprofit like direct to client side of things, it's Flow Studios. So yeah.
Sweet. Appreciate you being on. This
is
the first episode, dude. So
it was fun.
We got it done.
Feel like I didn't
barring any like technical stuff I would have fucked up. Hopefully the mic line thing is fine. But
you were so on it, I didn't get to fire many questions back because you were just boom, boom, boom. So, but yeah, it was fun.
All right. I appreciate having you on.